Hello everyone. Today I am going to speak about the endocrine system. So let us start with today's topic. The learning objectives of today's topic are I'll be defining and classifying the types of hormones. Then I'll be discussing about the pituitary hormones, how they are regulated, what are their functions, and disorders related to these hormones. I'll be also talking about pharmacology of individual pituitary hormones, their use if any, their agonist and antagonist, and their uses. So an hormone is a signaling molecule that is released from an endocrine cell or endocrine gland, which acts on the other cells upon transport by the circulatory system of that organism. So essentially, the signaling molecule or hormone is released from one cell and acts on a distant cell, and it can regulate the physiology and behavior of that organism. So it doesn't mean that these hormones do not act on the cell that release them. So that can also happen. The hormones are released from endocrine glands, or we call them as ductless glands, because these hormones are uh, released by exocytosis from the endocrine cells. The endocrine cells might be organized in the form of endocrine glands like the adrenal medulla, which releases adrenaline, or it might be unorganized in the form of cells that are scattered in an organ, like cells that are present in the pancreas, like the beta cells which release the insulin, or renin which is released by the juxtaglomerular cells, or the gut hormones. The major classes of hormones are can be classified depending upon the gland from which it is secreted, or depending upon the chemical structure of these hormones. So depending upon the chemical structures, they can be divided into amino acid derivatives, peptides, proteins, steroids, and vitamin derived. The amino acid derivatives are catecholamines like adrenaline, dopamine, noradrenaline, although noradrenaline is not a hormone. Then thyroid hormones, that is T3, T4, that is triiodotyrosine and tetraiodotyrosine. Then we have peptides. So all the hypothalamic regulatory hormones are peptides, that is chain of amino acids. Even vasopressin, that is secreted from the posterior pituitary, and somatostatin, these are also peptide hormones. The hormones which are protein in nature are insulin, growth hormone, parathyroid hormone. The hormones which are having steroidal nucleus are the sex hormones and the corticosteroids. Vitamin derived hormones like retinoids and the vitamin D derivatives. With respect to the source of the secretion of hormone, the hormones can be classified into those that are released from pituitary gland and other endocrine glands. So pituitary gland has two major parts, that is anterior and posterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary secretes growth hormone, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, the thyroid stimulating hormone, prolactin, adrenocorticotropic hormone, oxytocin, and antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin. The thyroid gland mainly secretes thyroid hormone, that is thyroxine, and the T3 and calcitonin. Apart from this, the parathyroid gland secretes parathyroid hormone. Ovaries secrete estrogen and progesterone. Testes secrete testosterone. Adrenal gland secretes, that is the adrenal cortex secretes corticosteroids, that is glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. And androgens as well as the adrenal medulla secretes catecholamines in the form of mainly adrenaline. The kidney secretes many hormones like vitamin D, erythropoietin, renin. Heart also secretes an hormone, that is atrial natriuretic peptide. So these are just a few examples of hormones. Let us see how the release of hormones is regulated. There are many factors which influence the release of hormones. So let us take an example of the hypothalamus and pituitary gland. So from hypothalamus is one of the major organ which controls the release of many hormones from the anterior pituitary, and later on the anterior pituitary controls the release of hormone from many other endocrine glands. So hypothalamus can be considered as one of the major organs which controls the endocrine system in the body. Hypothalamus does so by releasing hormones which can be either stimulating the release of hormones from pituitary or inhibiting the release. So these are known as the release or release inhibiting hormones. So let us take an example of how the release of thyroid hormone is controlled by hypothalamus. Hypothalamus releases the thyrotropin releasing hormone which stimulates the anterior pituitary to release the thyrotropin or thyroid releasing hormone. So in this way there is this control of hypothalamus on the anterior pituitary. There is something known as feed forward regulation, wherein release of one hormone from a gland causes release of another hormone or stimulates release of another hormone from the other gland. So the same example we can take, that thyroid releasing hormone acts on the thyroid, that is the peripheral endocrine gland, and which leads to release of the thyroid hormone. So this is a feed forward regulation. There is something known as feedback regulation which controls the further release of the hormones, like the thyroid gland that releases thyroid hormone. This thyroid hormone will control the further release of thyroid hormone by having a negative feedback towards the anterior pituitary as well as hypothalamus, so that the thyrotropin and thyrotropin releasing hormones are not released further. So these loops, that is the feedback loops, are long feedback loops as well as short feedback loops. So short feedback loops like the thyrotropin will inhibit the further release of thyrotropin releasing hormone, while thyroid hormone will inhibit the release of thyrotropin as well as thyrotropin releasing hormone. So that is the long loop feedback. Regulation of hormone release can be also controlled by non-hormonal substances. Say for example, hyperglycemia will increase the insulin release while it will inhibit the glucagon release. Insulin is important to decrease the blood glucose levels, while glucagon has the effect opposite to that of insulin. Then local regulatory systems are also in place, so that the release of hormones of one cell are controlled by the release of hormones by the other cells. Say for example, in the pancreas there are D cells which release somatostatins and B cells which release insulin. So whenever there is hypoglycemia, the D cells will release somatostatin which will act on the B cells that release insulin and inhibit the further release of insulin, so that the hypoglycemia will not further accentuate. So this is an example of paracrine control, that is paracrine meaning one cell controls the release of hormone from another cell which is adjacent to it, while autocrine control is seen where a hormone is released by the cell to control its own activity which will act on its on the same cell. Say for example, the B cells which release the insulin also release the insulin like growth factors, and this insulin like growth factor will act on the same cell to inhibit further release of insulin. There are also psychological factors which affect the release of hormones. Say for example, inhibits the release of gonadotropins, while stress causes release of the corticosteroids as well as catecholamines. There are even drugs that will affect the release or inhibit the release of hormones like bromocriptine, which is an dopaminergic agonist, inhibits the release of prolactin, while neuroleptics, which are dopaminergic antagonists, cause hyperprolactinemia. So in this way there are multiple factors which can cause the release or inhibition of release of hormones. So the present slide shows the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and the hormones that are released from the anterior and posterior pituitary, which further control the other endocrine glands or directly act on the organs, target organs themselves. So hypothalamus is the major controller of the release of hormones from the peripheral endocrine glands by acting on anterior pituitary. We can say that the hypothalamic hormones are released in very minute quantities, which are amplified by anterior pituitary, and this anterior pituitary, when it acts through its own hormones, will again amplify and cause more release of hormones in the periphery, which will have a very significant effect. So this kind of amplification is seen in the endocrinal system. The anterior pituitary releases, as we have already seen, the growth hormone, prolactin, the luteinizing hormone, the follicle stimulating hormone, the adrenocorticotropic hormone, and thyroid stimulating hormone, while the posterior pituitary releases the antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin and oxytocin. So we'll see these hormones one by one, that is the anterior pituitary hormones one by one. The posterior pituitary hormones are covered elsewhere. So let us see how these hormones act. Depending upon the chemical structure that we have already seen, the classification, we can know the mechanism of action of these drugs. For example, steroids, they mainly act through the nuclear receptors which are present in the cytoplasm. These steroids, like glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids, or the sex hormones, that is the estrogen, progesterone, and the testosterone. Then thyroid hormone, vitamin D, and retinoids, these also act on nuclear receptors, but they directly bind to the receptor in the nucleus. Most of the hormones, they act through the G protein coupled receptors. They are catecholamines, that is adrenaline, dopamine. Then the anterior pituitary hormones like luteinizing hormone, follicular stimulating hormone, the thyroid stimulating hormone, corticotropin, that is adrenocorticotropic hormone, and even the hypothalamic releasing factors which control the release of hormones from anterior pituitary, as well as somatostatin. All these hormones act by stimulating G protein coupled receptors. There are a few hormones which act through tyrosine kinase linked receptors. These are insulin like growth factors, and epidermal growth factors. Growth hormone and prolactin act cytokine regulated kinases linked receptors. So let us start with the growth hormone. Growth hormone is released from the anterior pituitary, and this release is controlled by two main hormones, that is the growth hormone releasing hormone, which is a releasing factor that is released from the hypothalamus, and somatostatin, which is inhibitory to anterior pituitary for release of growth hormone. When this growth hormone is released, it acts peripherally, and the peripheral tissues, they also release a hormone known as insulin like growth factor, This insulin like growth factor has a direct effect on the anterior pituitary as well as the hypothalamus. So its action on the anterior pituitary is inhibitory, while its action on the hypothalamus is stimulatory. Even the release of ghrelin, which is one of the important intestinal hormone, uh, it has a positive feedback towards the anterior pituitary and hypothalamus for further release of growth hormone, while the growth hormone releasing hormone, once released, inhibits the hypothalamus for its further release. So in this way there are many factors which affect the release of growth hormone. Growth hormone release is also induced by hypoglycemia, so that is one of the factors which is a non-hormonal factors which also controls the growth hormone release. Growth hormone release is also induced by fasting, and growth hormone is generally released rhythmically by the control of hypothalamus. So what are the functions of growth hormone? Growth hormone is required for normal growth of bones and almost all organs in the body. It causes hyperplasia of these organs during the growth of a child. The only thing is that the sexual maturation cannot occur with growth hormone alone. It also requires the sexual hormones like estrogen and testosterone as well as progesterone. And also development of brain and eye is independent of the release of growth hormone. So even if a person is having growth hormone deficiency, his or her development of brain and eye will be normal. Growth hormone increases the protein utilization, positive nitrogen balance, so that the muscles and bones grow stronger. The use of fats is preferred and the use of carbohydrates is spared, which is one of the actions opposite to that of insulin. So this is brought about by increased glucose production from the liver, that is increase in gluconeogenesis and inhibition of glucagon synthesis, and peripheral use of this carbohydrates is inhibited by glucagon, which is opposite to that of action of insulin. Growth hormone elaborates the insulin like growth factor 1 and somatomedins, which also bring about some of the actions of growth hormones. Insulin like growth factor has action similar to insulin and opposite to that of the growth hormone. The diseases that are seen in patients with growth hormone disturbances are acromegaly, gigantism and dwarfism. Acromegaly and gigantism results from excess growth hormone in adults and in children respectively. That is, acromegaly is seen in adults due to excess of growth hormone and gigantism due to excess of growth hormone in adults. Dwarfism results from insufficient growth hormone secretion in children, which leads to underdevelopment of such children. Somatropin is a recombinant human growth hormone, and it is being used in situations where there is growth hormone deficiency, like pituitary dwarfism, wherein growth hormone is not released in sufficient amounts, which causes the short stature and delay in growth and development of children. So these children, when appropriately diagnosed at the earliest, can be benefited the most and can lead to normal growth and development. Similarly, Turner syndrome and chronic renal insufficiency is presented with growth hormone deficiency and can be helped with the use of this recombinant human growth hormone. Constitutional short stature is present in some children due to their genetic makeup, and these are not to be treated with somatropin or recombinant growth hormone because there is no pituitary abnormality in such children. Growth hormone deficiency in adults can lead to wasting of muscles, lethargy, excess of fat in the body, and other constitutional uh, effects of growth hormone deficiency. Even AIDS related wasting, both of these can be treated with growth hormone, that is somatropin. Somatropin is used by subcutaneous route in such patients. The adverse effects are pain at the site of injection, lipodystrophy, glucose intolerance. These are the effects due to the metabolic effects of the growth hormone. Hypothyroidism is also seen because it unmasks the excess of thyroid stimulating hormone. It also causes salt and water retention, myalgia, headache, and hand stiffness. There are drugs which inhibit the growth hormone activity as well. So these are somatostatin, which inhibits the release of many hormones like thyroid stimulating hormone, prolactin, insulin, glucagon, and all of the intestinal hormones, and even secretions of the intestine are inhibited. It also causes constriction of splanchnic, hepatic, and renal blood vessels. Somatostatin is not used therapeutically because it affects release of many hormones and has many other actions, and it has a very short half-life. So somatostatin was previously used for the esophageal varices, wherein the esophageal varices, when they rupture, cause vomiting of blood. So due to constriction of these blood vessels, splanchnic blood vessels as well as hepatic blood vessels, it controls such bleeding. Octreotide is an analog of somatostatin, which is more potent and long acting as compared to the somatostatin, and at the same time it has weak action on insulin release. There are other analogs like lanreotide, which is still longer acting as compared to octreotide, and pegvisomant, which is a growth hormone antagonist and used in acromegaly. So pegvisomant is a growth hormone antagonist which acts by blocking the growth hormone receptor, while octreotide and lanreotide inhibit the release of growth hormone. So uses of such hormones or analogs are in acromegaly, where there is excess of growth hormone release, secretory diarrhea. So octreotide and other analogs, they will inhibit the all secretions of the GI tract, which will take care of the secretory diarrheas that are seen in carcinoid syndrome, AIDS patient, diarrheas due to chemotherapy, and diarrheas due to autonomic disturbances in diabetic patients. These drugs are also used for esophageal variceal bleeding. The adverse effects of these drugs are they can cause abdominal pain, nausea, and steatorrhea. So all this is because of the inhibition of intestinal secretions. They can cause diarrhea itself because the digestion of the food is affected, which can lead to diarrhea. It can also cause gallstones because of the biliary stasis it causes. Hyperglycemia is caused because of inhibition of insulin release. Coming to prolactin, the release of prolactin is controlled by hypothalamus by release of dopamine, which is an inhibitory regulator of the prolactin from the anterior pituitary. So release of dopamine inhibits the release of prolactin from anterior pituitary. There are other stimulators which can cause the release of prolactin, like estrogen, the thyrotropin releasing hormone, the suckling, which is a kind of reflex when the child suckles on the nipple of the mother. It causes release of prolactin, and neuroleptics, which are dopaminergic blockers, so it will have action opposite to that of dopamine, which will cause release of prolactin, while substances that inhibit the release of prolactin are the dopaminergic agonist like bromocriptine, so which will cause further release of prolactin. Prolactin itself has effects on the release of gonadotropins. By inhibiting the hypothalamus, it inhibits the gonadotropin releasing hormone, further the deficiency of which further causes less release of the FSH and LH. Prolactin causes growth and development of breast during pregnancy. It also requires estrogen and progesterone for the same. It causes growth of axini, which are the milk producing cells in the breast, and induce the production of milk proteins and lactose. After the birth of baby, that is post parturition, secretion of milk occurs due to loss of inhibitory control of estrogen and progesterone, which were high during pregnancy. The amenorrhea, anovulation and infertility seen after the parturition are due to persistence of prolactin, which inhibit the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, so that there is no release of FSH and LH that are required for ovulation and fertility. The excess of prolactin in the form of hyperprolactinemia causes the same effects that are seen after parturition, that is, it causes amenorrhea, infertility, as well as galactorrhea in women, and it also causes libido, loss of libido and depressed fertility in men. This kind of hyperprolactinemia is seen due to micro or macro prolactinomas. Prolactin inhibitors are used for this hyperprolactinemia, and they are essentially dopaminergic agonists like bromocriptine and cabergoline. Bromocriptine decreases the prolactin release by acting on the D2 receptors in the pituitary gland. It also increases the growth hormone release due to the dopaminergic agonist action. It is having anti-Parkinsonian effect due to the dopaminergic action in the basal ganglia. It also causes nausea and vomiting due to action on the D2 receptor present on the chemoreceptor trigger zone. Bromocriptine also causes hypotension due to the peripheral alpha adrenergic receptor blockade, which causes vasodilation as well as loss of the postural reflexes centrally. Bromocriptine also decreases the gastrointestinal motility. As compared to the bromocriptine, cabergoline is more potent and has specific action. That is why it is not an anti-Parkinsonian drug. Also, cabergoline is a longer acting drug. The uses of prolactin inhibitors are hyperprolactinemia, that is in the form of micro or macro adenomas, and acromegaly, so where cabergoline is preferred, while in Parkinson's disease bromocriptine is used. Coming to gonadotropins, let us see the regulation of gonadotropin secretion. The hypothalamus controls release of luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone by secreting gonadotropin releasing hormone on the anterior pituitary. A single hormone, that is gonadotropin releasing hormone, can control the cyclical release of LH and FSH by its pulsatile release from the hypothalamus. The luteinizing hormone releases progesterone and androgens from the theca cells, while FSH acts on the granulosa cells, which releases both estrogen and progesterone after ovulation. The granulosa cell secrete inhibin, which selectively inhibits the release of follicular stimulating hormone by short loop mechanism, feedback mechanism, while the estrogen and progesterone both have the short loop as well as long loop mechanism by which they inhibit both anterior pituitary as well as hypothalamus for further release of gonadotropin releasing hormone and LH and FSH. This is how there is a feedback control of release of hormones from the peripheral endocrine cells. Let us see the control of the hormone release in males. Essentially, the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus on the pituitary causes release of both LH and FSH, which are nearly constant as compared to LH and FSH in females, which vary during the menstrual cycle. So this LH mainly acts on the Leydig cell to cause release of testosterone, and the FSH acts on the Sertoli cells for influencing the spermatogenesis. The Sertoli cells secrete inhibin, which specifically inhibit the FSH, while dopamine specifically inhibits the release of luteinizing hormone. The release of these gonadotropins both in males and females are mostly seen during the menarche or during the puberty in males, and a cycle of menstruation is set in due to this in females, while it sets in the increase in the testosterone levels and spermatogenesis in the males. To summarize, hypothalamus controls over the pituitary by the gonadotropin releasing hormone, which causes release of LH and FSH, which control release of the sex hormones from the testes and ovaries in males and females respectively. These sex hormones have a short and long loop feedback by which they inhibit the pituitary and hypothalamus to inhibit the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone and LHS and FSH respectively. The gonadotropins, that is FSH and LH, have the effect on the sex organs, that is follicular stimulating hormone by the name itself suggests that it acts on the follicular cells and causes development of ovum. It also induces secretion of estrogen in women. It causes spermatogenesis and has tropic effect, that is it causes hypertrophy of seminiferous tubules. The luteinizing hormone causes ovulation during the LH surge of the menstrual cycle, and the corpus luteum thus forms, is sustained, and the release of progesterone is stimulated by luteinizing hormone. Testosterone secretion from the interstitial cells in male is stimulated by luteinizing hormone. The gonadotropin deficiency seen due to a pituitary disorder is known as hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, in which there is amenorrhea and infertility in women. As we can see how these hormones are important for fertility, and oligospermia and impotence as well as infertility in men. The excess of these gonadotropins can lead to polycystic ovarian disease because of excess of stimulation of ovarian cells. Various preparations of gonadotropins are available. These are minotropins, that is the combination of luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. There is urofolitropin or Minotropin, which is a pure form of follicle stimulating hormone. There is human chorionic gonadotropin, which has activity similar to that of luteinizing hormone, as it stimulates specifically the luteinizing hormone receptors. It is released from the placenta during pregnancy, and it causes continual release of progesterone from the corpus luteum and later on from placenta to continue the pregnancy. There are recombinant forms of these hormones available, which are very costly. These preparations have adverse effects like ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Because these hormones stimulate the ovary, they can cause hyperstimulation of ovaries. They can lead to polycystic ovarian disease, which is a drug induced polycystic ovary. They can cause multiple pregnancy because the ovulation from both ovaries can lead to multiple ovum which are ready for fertilization. They can cause precocious puberty in children because these hormones, when given at wrong time, can lead to early puberty. They can also cause edema, headache, and mood changes. So these preparations are used for amenorrhea and infertility in women. These amenorrhea and infertility, mostly due to anovulatory cycles, are helped, and they are generally given whenever there is failure of clomiphene, which is also an ovulatory agent. If clomiphene citrate fails, mainly in the polycystic ovarian disease, we can use the gonadotropin analogs, and they are generally given along with gonadotropin releasing hormone antagonist. So gonadotropin releasing hormone antagonist takes care of the cyclical release of LH and FSH, which might disturb the release of ovum. That has to be controlled by giving the gonadotropins. These drugs are also used to aid in vitro fertilization, wherein the ovum is extracted after ovulation and it is fertilized uh, outside the body, that is in vitro. So for this also an artificial ovulation is to be induced, and in a similar manner, that is using a gonadotropin releasing hormone antagonist, which will inhibit the cyclical release of LH and FSH, and an external control over the ovulation by giving gonadotropins can help in right timing of ovulation and its extraction. In male hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, that where gonadotropins are deficient and lead to uh, a delay in puberty, we can use human chorionic gonadotropin, which act on the luteinizing hormone receptor and cause testosterone secretion, and the treatment is further added with luteinizing and follicle stimulating hormone, which causes spermatogenesis, so that the maturation is complete. As we have seen, the gonadotropin releasing hormone can control the release of LH and FSH by its pulsatile release from the hypothalamus. So we have these gonadotropin releasing hormone analogs like gonadorelin, which is generally used for diagnostic purposes to see if the pituitary gonadal axis is intact. There are long acting gonadotropin releasing agonists available in the form of nafarelin, gozirelin, triptorelin, and leuprolide. They cause initial stimulation of the pituitary to cause release of the LH and FSH, but later on, due to continual activation or stimulation of pituitary, they inhibit the further release of gonadotropins, and in this way they cause pharmacological oophorectomy in females and orchidectomy in males. So this oophorectomy is a surgical procedure in which the ovaries are removed, and orchidectomy is a surgical procedure in which testes are removed. So such kind of sterility can also be imposed by these drugs. We call it as pharmacological oophorectomy or orchidectomy. But this kind of oophorectomy and orchidectomy is reversible, wherein the withdrawal of the drugs will after 1 or 2 months will cause fertility. These drugs are used in precocious puberty, wherein we do not want the person to become mature at an early age, so we can give gonadotropin releasing analogs, releasing hormone analogs. So these drugs will initially cause stimulation of release of gonadotropins, but later on inhibit the release of gonadotropins so that the puberty is delayed. In prostatic cancer also they are used along with the anti-androgens, so that the anti-androgen takes care of the androgens that are initially released due to stimulation of anterior pituitary. These drugs are also used in endometriosis, which is caused due to excess of the endometrial tissue in the peritoneal cavity responsive to progesterone. It is used in premenopausal breast cancer, wherein estrogen causes the growth of such cancer. They are also used in uterine leiomyoma and polycystic ovarian disease. So in all these diseases there is deficiency, the drugs cause deficiency of estrogen and progesterone that could help growth of endometrial tissue in endometriosis, growth of breast cancer in premenopausal breast cancer, or growth of the leiomyoma cells in uterine leiomyoma, or further increase in cysts in the polycystic ovarian disease. These drugs are also used to assist induction of ovulation, as we have seen earlier. They are used in combination with the gonadotropins so as to control the ovulation. The adverse effects of these drugs are, because they cause the pharmacological oophorectomy, they can lead to menopausal syndromes. On long-term use they can also lead to osteoporosis. There are also gonadotropin releasing hormone antagonists. We have earlier seen the analogs of gonadotropin releasing hormones. The problem with these drugs was these drugs cause initial stimulation and later on inhibition of release of gonadotropins, while these antagonists, that is ganirelix, citrorelix, degarelix and abarelix, as we can see there was relin in the analogs and relix in the antagonists. So there is no initial stimulation of release of gonadotropins from the anterior pituitary when these drugs are given, and the other advantages are that they are quick to act and there is more complete suppression of gonadotropin release, and there is lower chances of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Let us come to the thyroid stimulating hormone. The thyroid stimulating hormone release is controlled by release of thyrotropin releasing hormone, which is an hormone that acts on anterior pituitary and stimulates the release of thyrotropin or thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone further stimulates thyroid gland for release of T3 and T4, which are the thyroid hormones which act on the target tissues and show its effect. There is a negative feedback from the T3, T4 and reverse T3 hormones, which inhibit the release of further thyroid stimulating hormone from the anterior pituitary. The other substances that inhibit the release of the thyroid stimulating hormone are somatostatin, dopamine and glucocorticoids. The thyroid stimulating hormone causes hyperplasia and hypertrophy of thyroid follicles, as well as it increases the blood supply to the thyroid gland. It promotes the each step of the thyroid hormone synthesis, that is the iodine trapping, that is taken care by increasing the sodium iodide co-transporters, which actively take up the iodine from the blood. It also induces oxidation of the iodine and uptake of the thyroid colloid by follicular cells. It also causes release of T3 and T4 by proteolysis of thyroglobulin, so that the thyroid hormone is released from the thyroid gland. The diseases that are related with the thyroid gland due to problems in pituitary are secondary hypothyroidism, that is, there is deficiency of thyroid stimulating hormone which leads to secondary hypothyroidism. Primary hypothyroidism is seen when there is problem with the thyroid gland itself. Then pituitary hyperthyroidism is seen in patients wherein there is excess of TSH secretion from the pituitary gland in diseases like macroadenomas. Thyroid stimulating hormone by itself is not used therapeutically because the effect of thyroid stimulating hormone, that is release of thyroid hormones, can be taken care by substituting the thyroid hormone itself rather than giving thyroid stimulating hormone. Coming to ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, or commonly known as corticotropin. The release of ACTH is controlled by hypothalamus. Hypothalamus releases the corticotropin releasing factor, which stimulates release of ACTH from the anterior pituitary. It acts on the adrenal cortex to cause release of glucocorticoids. These glucocorticoids by short loop and long loop inhibit the further release of ACTH by acting on the anterior pituitary and hypothalamus respectively. The actions of the glucocorticoids lead to release of stress. That might be one of the factors to cause release of the corticotropin. So stress also excites the hypothalamus and causes release of corticotropin. Other than that, hypothalamus by itself has regulation, circadian control over the release of corticotropin. So corticotropin is highest during the morning and its secretion decreases over the day and is least at the night. So there is this circadian rhythm. Other than that, stress can cause release of corticotropin, which overrides the circadian control. The other factors that can stimulate the release of corticotropin is vasopressin, and inhibition, as we have seen, is by glucocorticoids. The function of corticotropin is synthesis of glucomineralo and corticoids and androgens in the adrenal cortex, which is done so by increased availability of cholesterol, which is the precursor of these steroids. The disorders that are seen with ACTH deficiency are hypocorticism, wherein there is deficiency of ACTH release, and there could be iatrogenic suppression of ACTH. Remember that the release of ACTH is controlled by glucocorticoid itself by short and long loop. When the person is given glucocorticoids by external source, it will affect the further release of corticotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus and corticotropin from the anterior pituitary. So both these factors will affect the release of corticotropin, and thus there will be no stimulation of adrenal cortex. So if there is no stimulation of adrenal cortex, there will be deficiency of glucocorticoids. Remember that these glucocorticoids are not synthesized and stored in the adrenal cortex. Whenever there is release of corticotropin, there is synthesis of the glucocorticoids and then they are released. So an external use of glucocorticoids will disturb these uh, adrenal the pituitary axis pituitary adrenal axis. That is why the iatrogenic suppression of corticotropin can be seen. The diseases due to excess of the ACTH are Cushing's disease, that can occur due to pituitary micro or macroadenomas, as well as ectopic synthesis of corticotropin, say in case of oat cell carcinoma of lung. So these either ectopic or excess of corticotropin from the pituitary adenomas can lead to a disease known as Cushing's disease, where there is excess of glucocorticoid production from the adrenal cortex later on. ACTH is not used therapeutically, so this is analogous with the thyroid stimulating hormone, wherein we use thyroid hormone instead of thyroid stimulating hormone. Similarly, we use corticosteroids in place of corticotropins. I have used the references, that is R.S. Satoskar and K.D. Tripathi for the presentation. Thank you all for your patient listening.